All right, I will call this meeting to order if order's possible tonight. I'm not sure about it, given some of the hilarity up here. Before we get started, I want to let council know in terms of the room. So you'll see that we do have a front-facing camera now at council's request. Hopefully the raised, what do they call these? Security screens or whatever? Confidence screens, I knew there was a word there, have been raised, so hopefully we can see that better. And we have, as Councillor Elliott said, a doomsday clock counting down up above there. So, yeah. So again, we'll just keep playing with the technology until we get it right, because potentially we're going to go back to electronic or blended meetings or whatever. So it's important to have this technology. So I do recognize that we meet on the traditional territory of the LHTAKO DENE Nation. And with respect to the agenda, I don't believe there's any additions or deletions. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda as posted? Councillor Paul, Councillor Goulet, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Oh, we've got that delay still, right? Okay, wait a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Be at council's forbearance if we've got contested issues where the vote's going to split or whatever, then that's the more critical ones that we get that public recording. If it's pro forma, like agenda and minutes and so on, we can just proceed. So if council's good with that, we can do that. Adoption of the regular meeting minutes. So we've got the meeting minutes of July 29th, and then there was an addition to the June 29th, and I believe we can do these together. So if we could adopt the minutes together. Motion, Councillor Elliott, so move. Councillor Roodenburg. Oh, I do have to look over there, don't I? Councillor Roodenburg, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so that's carried. All right, tonight we have a special presentation, and it's always a pleasure for us to do this. And so we're going to be saying adieu to our outgoing royalty, and hello and welcome, and looking forward to working with you in the coming year, to our incoming ambassadors. So Councillor Roodenburg always does me the favor of coming up and doing the presentations. So we're going to recognize our outgoing royalty, and then I would like our outgoing royalty to have the jackets and the roses for our incoming ambassadors. So in our 2020 ambassador team, and I've got here exiting, but that just means that your term is up. I know you're still going to be in the community and hopefully engaged with us as a community for many years to come. Jadacia Barker, come on up, Jadacia.
Thank you for all the work that you've done here in the city.
Sarah Fudit. And Beth Mattioli. And thank you so much, our outgoing ambassadors for 2020. Okay, so if you want to just maybe put your plaques and your roses down there, and then we would normally have three, of course. Nailene isn't able to join us, but between the three of you, if you can do us the service of presenting to our incoming. So Jana Dumais. Just come on up, yeah. And if you grab a rose, and the jackets are marked. And I do believe for the pictures, I think we get them to put the jackets on. Is that right, Rose? You want them to? Okay.
Look right now.
If you want. You uncomfortable with it? You can do it later if you want to outside there. Sure. Yeah, you bet. Okay. And of course, Naylene Runge is not able to join us tonight as her dad, Councillor Runge, is away too. And Jesse Joel. So if we get, yeah, if you guys stand there, and then parents can get pictures with the two of you together.
2020 and 21.
Here, I'll get out of the way. You don't want to be backlit by my head. Great. Now, before you go, it's your final opportunity for our outgoing. If you want to say a few words, that is available to you. And for the incoming, if you want to talk about your aspirations for going forward, feel free. So it's really up to you. We give you that opportunity. So whoever wants to lead off or walk off, whichever works best for you. So go ahead. Moving on to council reports and discussion items. Councillor Roodenburg attended on my behalf the CRD meeting and can speak to any notes or highlights of the CRD board meeting.
It's been a while since I've used this. It is as presented there, if anybody has any questions. It was a regular, normal CRD meeting, and it's been quite a while since it happened. They talked a little bit about the results of the assent vote for the pool upgrades, and basically, yeah, there's not a whole heck of a lot in here unless people have questions about it.
Any questions from council? Okay, so that's an information item only. City staff reports, and I'll just turn this over. I believe the city manager is going to just quickly speak to this. It's just an information item for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Barkerville Brewing Company is planning a patio expansion, and due to specific time constraints where they were trying to round up a contractor who could come in there quicker and do some of the work for them. Asked if we could see if we could expedite this item, so it was put out as an e-vote. And the e-vote is that council provides a referral to the Liquor Control Board around community impacts of their anticipated expansion for their patio. It should also be noted that the patio expansion, while it increases the seating area, does not increase the actual capacity of Barkerville Brewing. That capacity was determined by the washroom facilities that they have, as noted in the report from Director Turner. So what we're asking for tonight is that council would ratify that electronic vote held between August 9th and 11th, 2021, that approves staff providing the following council resolution regarding the Barkerville Brewing Company application for a structural change to an approved lounge. So approved Councillor Runge, seconded Councillor Elliott, and resolved that council provides the following comment regarding the Barkerville Brewing Company application for a structural change to an approved lounge. The property is surrounded by businesses with no residential properties in close proximity to the brewery. Community impacts identified included concerns around parking, but it is understood that the brewery's busy times are in the evenings and on weekends, which minimize the impact on surrounding businesses. And comment was requested from abutting property owners, the RCMP, the Fire Department, Bylaw Enforcement, and Quesnel Downtown Business Association via email of the application. Majority of those property owners identified that the overall community impact is anticipated to be beneficial, as the expanded outdoor seating will enhance the streetscape for visitors and tourists and will strengthen the draw to the downtown core. So council also recommends the issuance of the Barkerville Brewing Company structural change application to expand the currently existing patio space by 124.8 square meters for the following reasons. Adequate efforts were undertaken to gather the views of the public for the proposal. The impact of the noise on nearby residents will not be an issue, and the overall impacts on the community are expected to be beneficial. And that was carried by council, with the exception of one person who did, where there was not a vote recorded. So requested tonight is that council will ratify that e-vote. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott, so moved. Councillor Roodenburg, second. So on the ratification, Councillor Paul.
Yes, thank you. I just a question to staff. I noticed that there's an encroachment agreement that is part of this package, and I'm just wondering if you could maybe expand on that, on the encroachment agreement. I guess the question would be, how much of the patio area would be city, I presume, city property?
So Councillor, I'm not going to engage in that conversation. This is a ratification of a vote already held. And it's one of these traps, and we're trying to sort it out. We're actually seeking advice because this is already voted and approved. And it's one of those weird situations where we're bringing a vote forward for a ratification vote. But staff, if you want to offline, we can get that clarification for you. But because it's already voted, we're basically just noting for the public that the vote occurred.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
Yeah, and we are, so for council, we are trying to figure that out because it's strange to do a vote, have something ratified, council was provided with all the information, and then to bring it back, and it feels like you're almost re-voting it. So Councillor Paul, do touch base with staff. We can get you the answers to those questions, but right now we're just ratifying our vote. And so on the vote for ratification, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, next, the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada Local Food Infrastructure Fund application. Coordinator Blair.
The purpose of this report is to gain Council's approval to submit an application to the Local Food Infrastructure Fund to expand Phase 2 of the Food Hub. The project will further expand on previous grant funding for the food hub to purchase additional specialty equipment, which will improve capacity and increase service levels. Phase 1 of the food hub included renovations to the space leased at 101 Marsh Drive, and the purchase of basic equipment including a range, combi oven, dishwasher, walk-in cooler and freezers, exhaust hoods, planetary mixer, reach-in refrigerators, sinks, and shelving and work tables. This project involves the capital purchases of further equipment identified in the implementation plan, including food lab testing equipment and swabs, specialized equipment for food processing, including an industrial dehydrator, grain mill, induction cooktop burners, proofer cabinet, and more, smallwares and utensils, and a refrigerated delivery van and branded graphics wrap. I'll move on to the recommendations if there's no questions.
Just do the recommendation and I can help you with the question.
That Quesnel City Council supports the application to the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada Local Food Infrastructure Fund for $84,439 for the Quesnel Food Innovation Hub Strategic Equipment Purchasing Project.
On the recommendation, Councillor Elliott, so move. Councillor Goulet. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay.
Her hand's still up there.
Because it was frozen. Okay, we'll get it figured out. Thank you, Coordinator Blair. Then report number 3, permissive tax exemptions. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to seek council approval of the first 2 readings of the City of Quesnel 2020 to 2023 tax exempting amendment bylaw number 1909 of 2021 to exempt the property the city leases to the Sprout Kitchen Society from property taxation. By way of summary, the city, as you know, has leased a portion of 101 Marsh Drive for the location of the food hub. The city then leases this property to the nonprofit group Sprout Kitchen Society to run the food hub. In order for the property to be exempt from taxation next year, a permissive tax exemption bylaw must be passed and submitted to the BC assessment by October 31st. This bylaw also includes the removal of the permissive exemption for the Fraser Village Home Society as part of that bylaw that we're approving, as that property is now owned by the Provincial Rental Housing Corporation, and that corporation is assessed taxes through the Grant in Lieu program. Permissive tax exemption bylaws require public notice, so there's a statutory advertising requirement, which will be done after the first 2 readings of this bylaw are complete. Once the public notice is complete, staff will bring the bylaw back for 3rd reading and then adoption. It should be noted, though, the financial implications of this are that depending on the final determination of that assessment for the lease space, the permissive tax exemption could be approximately $6,500 to that organization, of which $4,500 are municipal taxes. So when a municipality does a tax assessment, the other taxers follow the lead of that municipality. That's why it's more than just municipal taxes. So the recommendation is that council approves the first 2 readings of the City of Quesnel 2020 and to 2023 tax exempting amendment bylaw number 1909 of 2021 in the bylaw section of the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So this doesn't require a vote? This does not require a vote because we'll deal with it in the bylaw. But are there any questions or comments around this? Councillor Paul?
Thank you. A question to staff. I understand that the proposed or the estimated value of the assessment or the tax that the city would not collect is $4,500 based upon the expected or anticipated assessment of the Sprout Kitchen. What I'd like to know is what would be the taxation that would accrue to the city if the Sprout Kitchen had not occurred? In other words, if that piece of property had stayed in private hands.
Thank you. That's actually a really great question, and I don't have that answer right with me because I don't know what that pre-renovation taxation level was on that. Happy to find that information and send that to you. But that building was not being used, and it was in tough shape, so it would have been a low number. I don't know what that number is, and as well, we're only in a portion of that building, right? So it's not the full building. So it would have been quite a low number, but again, I'm sorry I don't have that number.
Yeah, and we can try and get it, but there was also the renovation done for the barber shop and things, so there's been a few things switching there. But I think for the public's edification, we would end up just charging this to ourselves as the leasee right now in some manner, and triple net or whatever the case may be. And it doesn't preclude us from when this does get up and running as a proper co-op or whatever the case may be from revisiting it, right? So this is just basically us not cutting a check on one hand and then charging it back on another hand in this case. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you. And I would presume that this tax exemption would only be applicable as long as that particular piece of ground is occupied by the Sprout Kitchen. In other words, if it reverts back, then we go back to square one.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is correct, Councillor. And that is not just managed by ourselves, but that's also managed by BC Assessment. It does look at that routinely. They look at all the properties with permissive and make sure that use is what the assessment relief was intended for.
Okay. So again, we'll deal with the bylaw in the bylaw section. Go ahead. Sorry, Councillor Roodenburg.
No problem. And I do support this, but I do have a question around permissive tax exemptions as a whole. Do we have a cap on how much we allow for permissive tax exemption? Because I seem to recall us having discussions about this years ago. I don't know if that's still in place or not.
Thank you. Yes, we do have a cap, which, again, I don't have that number with me. But what we typically do when we bring those final assessments to council for consideration, sometimes that cap moves up or down. And in this case, we may have to move that cap up just a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
But correct me if I'm wrong, though, as former chair of finance and whatnot, the cap is kind of weird because we actually just deal with what are the permissive exemptions and making sure we've got that right. And it's really BC assessment that makes the determination of what's eligible and not eligible, and then we make our determination. But I don't think the cap is in the traditional sense of a cap where we're fixed and we're only going to be allowing exemptions up to a certain point. It's more flexible than that. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, it's totally flexible depending on what City Council chooses to do. And I think the cap is a bit of a holdover from previous days where councils felt good, oh, we're only exempting X amount of tax. So they put that cap in there to try to signify what the total amount is. But at the end of the day, any year that we've increased tax exemptions, we typically adjust that cap. So it's not so much of a cap as just a total number of exemptions.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate that clarification because, like you said, it is a holdover from previous councils, and I do remember us having to raise that cap because we had allowed more buildings, et cetera, to be part of the exemption. So I just want that clarified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to our final staff report, the BC Winter Games, Manager Reid.
Thanks. The purpose of this report is to provide a brief update to Council regarding next steps with hosting the BC Games in Quesnel in 2024. So as announced last month, the City of Quesnel will be the host community for BC Winter Games 2024. Hosting the Games requires the formation of a local BC Games Society, which will be responsible for organizing the Games. All funding, sponsorships, and expenses will flow through the Society. The BC Games President and CEO will be in touch with Mayor Simpson in January to discuss the formation of a nominations committee with board selection beginning in June of 2022. A timeline from January 2022 through to post-games reporting in 2024 is attached to the report, and the report is just for information purposes.
Thank you. And again, this was, I think, great news for our community and certainly a part of our transition strategy and our hosting strategy. Any questions from council? I have a couple myself. Questions or comments from council? Okay. Just with respect to them getting in touch with us, Vernon, I believe, is the host for next year, right, for February. Would there be an expectation that we're getting a small team together to actually go down to Vernon to see what's going on?
It doesn't seem like that's an expectation that they've put out for us. It could be an option, but it's not required.
And so it may be something we may want to consider, right? And then the other is, with respect to council, is to start putting your thinking caps on about who we might be tapping on the shoulder. And this will be a jointly hosted event. Chief LeBrun and I were on the conference call for the announcement of this. And so it's going to be a LHTAKO, DENE, City of Quesnel hosted event. But it would be great for you to start thinking about who may be wanting to play a role and who we would want to approach to play a role in the organizing committee. And then, of course, it'll cascade out there from the various sports organizations. My other question is respecting the different venues and so on. When do they lock in what sports we will actually, because there's a kind of a range of sports and it kind of flexes from year to year and host city to host city. Do you know when they kind of lock in what sports and what venues?
It's in the timeline. I couldn't say off the top of my head exactly when that is. We did have to put it in our bid package, what venues we were proposing for what events and which events we could host. I'm just not seeing
that's okay.
it
If it's in the time,
it is in there, yeah.
Yeah, if it's in the timeline, we can look at it. But I think from a strategic perspective for council, I think the earlier the conversation we have with the not-for-profits or the organizations that have the venues, then the better in terms of, potential venue improvements, attracting grants, et cetera. I have a call with Northern Development Trust tomorrow, and this is on the agenda for them because I know the City of Prince George was able to work with Northern Development Trust for some special considerations for investments in the area for the Canada Winter Games. So I think the sooner we're engaged in those conversations, the longer a lead time we have if we need to do venue improvements. So, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Further to that, I notice on the timeline there that September 2022, which is a year from now, that the BC Games staff tour facilities with the Parks and Recreation staff. So there is a date set for that.
Yeah, it was a sport package announced August 2022, and then BC Games staff tour facilities. So we'll get those details, I'm sure, all ironed out in January. Yeah.
Sounds great. Again, I think it's great for our community, and of course, that time of year, it's a great shot in the arm for our local businesses too. So, okay, any further questions? That's an information item only for council. Seeing none. The council information package, nothing was brought forward. The request from the Fall Fair.
The Quesnel Fall Fair requests a resolution of support from council to apply for the NDIT Festivals and Events Grant for the 2022 Quesnel Fall Fair.
Okay, can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Paul, Councillor Elliott. Anybody got comments? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Great. Okay, thank you. And then with respect to the bylaws, the permissive tax exemption first and second readings. Councillor Roodenburg, so moved. Councillor Goulet, second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's carried. Then, no changes to upcoming meeting schedule. Note that the September 7th meeting will be a fully in-camera special meeting. We would normally cancel that meeting right on the back of the long weekend, but we have a bunch of pending time-sensitive issues that we need to deal with, so we're going to use the window to have a working session for council. And no changes to committee appointments. Any announcements or future events? Okay, seeing none. Gallery questions? Seeing none, I would invite a motion to adjourn. Thank you. I looked that way first. Councillor Roodenburg, Councillor Paul, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, everybody.